Alright, what is up you guys, and welcome back to the Progressive Skills in English Level 3 coursebook. In today's recording, we're going to be going over Theme 4, Listening. Okay, so let's hop right in. Here we have Exercise A, Activating Ideas. What do all the items on page 107 have in common? So this is 106, this is 107 right here. So what do all the items on page 107 have in common? Take a look here, you guys. So what do all of these have in common? Well, based on the pictures, we can see that all of these are icons that are used on either computer screens or mobile phones. Okay? 2, how many items can you name from the illustration on page 107? Right, so how many items can we name? Alright, so pretty simple. We can say things like thumbs up, that probably means like, right? Thumbs down as in dislike, right? We also have music. Loudspeaker as in sound or volume. We also have SMS right here, so that's for text. We also have the famous envelope for email. We also have, we have headphones, right? As in playing music through headphones. And then we have the globe, right? As in the web, the internet. Okay? Look at the information on the right from university, faculty. Check your answers to A1. Right, so here we have Department of Media Studies, Media and Audience. What is the relationship between media such as television, Facebook, and iTunes and its audience? In this lecture, we look at 3 key questions about the relationship. Before the lecture, read McQuail Dennis, 2010, Mass Communication Theory and Introduction, London, Sage. Okay, so so far we'll talk a little bit more about this, but so far we're really close. It really doesn't matter. It's the same thing. iTunes, obviously a streaming service for Apple, for music, television, Facebook, really similar. Okay, let's go to A4. Who is the main source for the information in this lecture? In this case, it'll be Dennis McQuail in one publication, the book that you're supposed to read, Mass Communication Theory. Okay? I'm not sure if it's a book or it's a survey. We'll find out. Right, now let's go to Exercise B, Understanding an Introduction. Let's take a look here. Here we have, listen to the introduction to a lecture. Okay, and then we're gonna find out about the 3 different questions, and we'll use the 2 words below for each question. So we have media and audience, so keep those 2 words in mind when listening to the introduction. Okay, and I also want you guys to focus on how the lecturer is explaining each question. Okay, so without any further ado, let's get to the introduction.
Track 4.1.
Nowadays, the media is big business. It is obvious that we all encounter media all the time. Television, radio, movies, music, and, of course, social media like Facebook and Twitter. The audience is, potentially, worldwide. Sociologists and psychologists are interested in 3 questions about media. The questions sound very similar, but they are, in fact, very different. By the way, I'm taking my points today from the 2010 edition of Dennis McQuail's book about mass communication theory. Okay. The first question is, what do audiences use media for? In other words, how do they use it? This might seem a very easy question to answer, but it is interesting to see how McQuail answers the question. We'll come to that in a minute. Secondly, what does media do to the audience? What I mean is, how does media influence the opinions and attitudes of the audience? Psychologists used to be very worried about this, and it's still a concern. But McQuail has some interesting points to make in this area. The third And for me, the most interesting question is this. What does the audience do to the media? Or, to put it another way, how does the audience change the media? Perhaps it is strange for you to hear that the audience can change the media when we are talking about some of the biggest organizations in the world, the giant media companies, I mean. But research shows that the audience can and does change the media to some extent.
Alright, so that was the introduction. Now let's go. So what are the 3 key questions, you guys? Okay, so we have, what does the audience do with the media, right? Or in other words, as she said, how do they use it? So that's question 1. Question 2, we have, what does media do to the audience, right? In other words, how does it influence the audience? Okay? Again, I'm using the 2 words in each question. Question 3, what does the audience do to the media? In other words, how does it change the media itself? And basically the impact of the audience on the media. Okay? Right. B2, how does the lecturer explain each question? Tick the idea she uses. Right, so if you noticed, she puts the question in other words, right? Just like I said. So for example, what does the audience do with media? She changes it to how do they use it, right? What does media do to the audience? Other words, how does it influence the audience? So we'll say she puts the question in other words. Okay? So that was exercise B. Now let's go to exercise C, understanding a lecture. Okay, so we're going to now listen to the second part of the lecture. Choose the best way to complete each sentence according to the theories of McQuail. It's 3 minutes long, you guys, so please be careful and try to tick the correct or circle the correct answer as you go along. Don't wait for it to be over before you start answering, okay? And then we'll check our answers. Here we go.
Track 4.2.
Okay, so first question. What do audiences use media for? According to McQuail, audiences use media for 4 main purposes. Can you guess what they are? Well, it's likely that you can work out 2 of them, but it's doubtful that you will get the other 2. They are not really obvious. Firstly, McQuail says people use media for information and advice. People get news from media, but in addition, people use media to get advice. The internet, particularly, is a major source of advice, from TripAdvisor on hotels to price comparison sites for all kinds of consumer products. It's known that most people check out companies and products on the internet now before they make a buying decision. So that's information. The second use is entertainment. It's obvious that people use media like films and television programs, music and the theatre for relaxation and enjoyment. For a short time, they stop thinking about work or worrying about their lives. Some people say it is their only way to relax. It's sad that this is true, but it is part of modern life, perhaps. So we've got the 2 obvious ones out of the way. Did you guess them? Now, how else do people use media? Well, in McQuail's view, they use it for, thirdly, personal identity. What does that mean in this situation? Well, personal identity in this case is the way that you see yourself. I'll repeat that. The way that you see yourself. We all have a view of our personal identity. McQuail believes that people use the media to find out more about themselves. Finally, in McQuail's view, audiences use media for interaction. Interaction. For example, people often start conversations by referring to media. For example, did you see that program on television last night? Or, have you seen the latest Bond movie? Just think back to the last few days. When did you last start a conversation with a reference to media of some sort? I bet it was very recently.
Alright, so now let's choose the best way to complete each sentence. So for 1, we have audiences use media for 2 purposes, or 3 purposes, or 4 purposes. The answer is 4 purposes. Okay? 2, people use media for information and, we'll say, the internet, advice, price, and comparison. We'll say people use media for information and advice. 3, some people use media for, is it a short time, or because they like films, or to relax? And the answer will be to relax, okay? To relax and enjoy. 4, the third usage of media is for personal, work, time, or identity. So we'll say the third usage of media is for personal identity, okay? 5, the final usage of media is for international work, interaction, or internet work, and in this case it'll be interaction. Okay, so 1 to 5, 4 purposes, advice, to relax, identity, and interaction. Okay, so that was exercise C. Now let's go to exercise D. Understanding a lecture. Now we're going to listen to the third part of the lecture and answer the questions. So we have 2 questions. What must we teach children about the media and why? And 2, how has the answer to question 3, if you guys remember, what does the audience do to the media? How has that question changed in the last 20 years and why has it changed? Okay, so how was it changed in the last 20 years and why has it changed? So I'll play it and then we'll check the answers. Here we go.
Track 4.3.
Okay, so we have heard about the first question. Now the second question. What does media do to the audience? It is known that some media items, like tabloid newspapers, have a very powerful influence. News media forms opinions about political points and social points in its audience. Advertising media gets people to buy products, maybe products they don't need or can't afford. The internet contains lots of websites with information which is simply not true, but some believe everything they read on the internet. So it is important that we teach children to recognize the power of the media and teach them also to think critically about information from media sources. It's sometimes called media literacy, meaning the ability to read the media as opposed to normal literacy, which is the ability to read text, which does not have a hidden message. Finally, question 3. What does the audience do to the media? It is interesting that the answer has probably changed in the last 20 years. Until about 2000, the answer was probably that the audience did not change media at all. All the interest of sociologists was on the second question. What does the media do to the audience? But now, many sociologists think that audiences are affecting the media in a big way. Perhaps you can guess the things that have produced this change in the last 20 years. Of course, it's social media. It's fantastic that Twitter and blogging and other social media have given the audience a voice, and a very powerful voice too. It's believed that sometimes the modern audience changes a message from the media in a very strong way. Okay, so those are the 3 questions. Now let's look at each point in more detail.
Alright, so that was the final part of the lecture. Now let's answer the questions. So we have 1. What must we teach children about the media and why? Okay, so like the lecturer said, we must show children that we should allow them to recognize the power of the media, right? We should give them a sense of media literacy, which basically means give them a chance to think critically about information from media sources. Okay? And for question 2, how has the answer to question 3, what does the audience do to the media, change in the last 20 years? Why has it changed? Well, because the audience has a big influence on the media now through things like Twitter, blogging, and obviously other social media like Instagram and YouTube. The audience now has a voice, right? Before that, the audience didn't really have a voice at all, but now they have a very powerful voice. Okay, so that was exercise D. Let's take a quick look at the vocab box. Here we have effect, audience, comparison, concern, consumer, critically, identity, influence, interaction, media, obvious, and relaxation. Okay, so that was the vocab box, and this was the first part of listening. Now let's move on. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on to exercise A, reviewing vocabulary. Here we have match the words with each definition below. So here we have some definitions, and we're going to have to choose the correct word for each one. Okay, so number 1, we have something for fun or to relax. This is obviously entertainment. Okay, what about B, you guys? People watching something, and this is not about sports. Okay, so simply people watching something, and this is going to be audience. Okay, so number 2 is audience. C, effect on someone, something maybe. So we'll say this is influence, right here. Okay, influence. So influence is the effect on someone or something. Okay. D, television, radio, the internet, and so on. What's the word for this definition? This is obviously the media, right? The media is television, radio, the internet, and so on. Okay? Then we have E, clear, easy to see, and understand. This one is pretty simple. We have obvious. Okay? So clear, easy to see, and understand is the definition of the word obvious. F, change someone, something, right? We'll say this is effect. Notice how this effect is not the same as this effect, right? One has an E and one has an A, okay? Please make sure you know the difference, okay? G, helpful suggestions. This is advice, right? When you give someone advice, you're basically giving them helpful suggestions. H, we have self. Self here means identity, right? Your identity, yourself, your being, who you are. Okay? And I, conversation, emailing, etc. This is simply interaction, right? Interaction through a conversation, an email, a phone call. Okay? These stand for interaction. Okay, now let's go to exercise B, identifying vowel sounds. Let's actually go to pronunciation check first. Here we have saying vowels with 2 or 3 letters. So in most cases, 2 vowels together make one sound, right? So 2 vowels together, for example, I-O or A-I, right? So the word interaction, for example, right? There are 2 vowels, but they make one sound, so interaction, as an okay? Entertain, that A sound, okay? It's A and I, but we pronounce it as one, so entertainment, okay? Believe, it just goes, right? It's one sound. Sometimes, however, 2 or 3 vowels in a word, they make 2 different vowel sounds together. So not one, but two vowel sounds. For example, the word audience, right? You can see I pronounce the I and the E as well. So audience. I don't say audience or audience. I say audience, okay? The I is pronounced and the E is pronounced as well. Same goes with the word influence, right? Influ, U, and E. Influence, okay? Influence, influence, okay? Media, right? The word I and A, I pronounce both of them. So media, I and A, okay? Now let's take a look at the words in the box. Okay, so I'm gonna pronounce them, okay? And then we'll move on. So we have people, source, tabloid, relaxation, their, voice, guess, companies, audience, influence, and media. What do all the words have in common? Look at the underlined letters. They all have vowels, right? They all have two vowels together. What is unusual about the words in the third row? So here, audience, influence, media. Obviously, this is a word making two vowel sounds, like we said here. So audience, influence, and media. Okay, so that was exercise B. Now let's move on. Let's go to skills check 1. Here we have something called restatement. Now let's talk a little bit about that. So speakers often say information or ideas again, but in a different way. This is basically the description for restatement. When you hear a speaker say, something, but then they say the same thing, but in a different way, in a different style, maybe to elaborate on what he or she just said, or just to explain it in a different style. Okay? Basically, what this does is it gives you two chances to understand, right? Here we have 3 different ways to introduce a restatement. Okay, so now that we know what a restatement is, let's see how speakers start a restatement. So you'll probably hear things like information and then in other words, and they'll say it in a different way. Or they'll be straightforward and say to put it in another way, and then they'll keep going. They could also say what I mean is, and again they'll say it in a different style. So all of these are basically the 3 most common ways to introduce a restatement. Okay? No, just a note here, by the way. Notice the stressed word in each phrase. The speaker's voice rises to the end of the phrase, then pauses before continuing with the statement. And actually, you guys, this is quite important, right? When you say an introduction to a restatement, you want basically your voice to rise as you move forward with the introduction, right? And then at the end, pause for like a second or 2 and then keep going. So don't just cram things together and talk nonstop, okay? Give yourself a second or 2. So in other words, or to put it in another way, or what I mean is, you see how I'm raising my tone just a little bit, right? So raise your tone just a little bit and pause for a second or 2 and keep going, okay? Now let's go to exercise C, identifying a new skill. Here we have the lecturer in 4.1 restates the questions to make it easier for the audience to understand. Find the 3 statement phrases in the jumble of words in the box. Okay, so here we have basically a jumble of words in a box, right? And we want to find the 3 restatement phrases here. So in other words, or to put in another way, and what I mean is. So let's check. So here we have in other words. Okay, so in other words, that's one. We can also say to put it in, we'll say another way. Okay, and finally we have what I mean is. Okay, so these were the 3 phrases. All right, now let's go to exercise D, restating. We're basically going to apply what we just talked about here in Skills Check 1. So look at some sentences using the words in Exercise A. Restate each idea using the definitions in Exercise A. Right, so here we have 8 sentences, and we want to talk about it, or talk about what's being said in the sentence in a different style. So 1, here we have, I'm going to talk about the media. So in other words, I could say television, radio, the internet, and so on. This is the exercise. Let me give you one more too, and then I want you to pause the video, try to do it on your own, and then come back and check your answers. Okay, so 2, people use the media for entertainment. I could say, what I mean is, they use it to relax and enjoy themselves. Okay? 3, the media has a worldwide audience. We could say, in other words, the audience is from all countries. 4, the media influences people. What I mean is that people take notice of it. 5, this is obvious. In other words, it's clear, right? 6, people use the media for advice. We'll say, to put it in another way, right? People use it to find solutions to problems. 7, people sometimes use the media for personal identity. We can say, to put it another way, they use it to express themselves. 8, the media is often used as a starting point for social interaction. We could also say, in other words, to start conversations. Okay, so that was exercise D. I don't think it's too hard. I think you just need to practice a little bit and you'll get it with time. Now let's go to the vocab box. Here we have advice, blog, entertainment, fantastic, probable, social media, tabloid, and worldwide. Okay, so that was exercise D and the vocab box. Now let's move on. Alright, you guys, so now let's move on to exercise E. Here we have identifying a new skill. Look at these sentences from the lecture. In 4.1, how does the lecturer feel about each underlined statement? Right, so let's take a look at skills check 2 before we move on. Here we have something called replacement subject it. So sentences sometimes begin with it as the subject of the sentence, okay? So sometimes, like we said, a sentence begins with it, but as the subject, okay? The word itself has no real meaning, okay? So in this case, the word it does not have any real meaning because it doesn't replace an earlier noun, like when you use it in the middle of the sentence, okay? Also, sometimes the phrase with it shows the certainty of the statement, basically the opinion of the speaker. Okay, so let's see some examples here. We have, it's known that tabloid newspapers have a powerful influence. It's probable that most people check out companies on the internet. So this gives us basically a percentage of the opinion of the speaker and the certainty of the statement. Okay, so maybe 100%, 40 to 60, or 5 to 10. Okay, it's possible that you won't get the answer. All right, so the choice of adjective also determines the certainty of the statement. Okay, so probable is not the same as possible, is not the same as known, is not the same as believed. Okay, so let's take a look again at exercise E. Here we have, it's fantastic that Twitter and blogging and other social media have given the audience a voice. Okay, so how does the lecturer feel about each underlined statement? Twitter and blogging and other social media have given the audience a voice. Well, we'll say that the lecturer in this case is happy and supports social media for giving the audience a voice. 2, it's believed that sometimes the modern audience changes a message from the media in a very strong way. We'll say that the lecturer in this case, he believes that the modern audience changes a message from the media in a very strong way. So it's he's probably on the fence here. Okay, now let's go to exercise F, understanding the certainty of a statement. We're going to be listening to some sentences. For each sentence, decide if the statement is either 100% certain, 40 to 60%, or 10 to 20%. So after each sentence, I'm going to pause and we'll check our answers together. So here we go.
Track 4.5. 1.
It's believed that oil will run out in about 100 years.
All right, so 1 is it's believed that oil will run out in about 100 years. Okay, so when I say it's believed using the adjective, right? So it's believed will run out in about. So I used believed and about. That means it's about 40 to 60%. I'm not 100% certain, okay? And also, it's believed, so there is a chance, okay? So it's not 10 to 20, it's 40 to 60, okay?
2. It's known that the Earth goes round the sun.
Okay, so for 2, we'll say it's known that the Earth goes round the sun. In this case, we know for a fact that the Earth goes around the sun. So that's 100%. It's proven, okay? So when I say it's known, just like the word certain, it's certain that the Earth goes around the sun. That's 100%, okay?
3.
It's likely that the population will reach 9 billion by 2050.
Okay, 3, it's likely that the population will reach 9 billion by 2050. Okay, so for 3, we'll say likely. Likely, so again, probably for the most part, it will happen. So I'll put this at 40 to 60. Okay?
4. It's certain that fresh water supply will be a big problem in the future.
All right, so for 4, he said that the word certain, right? So it's certain that fresh water will be a big problem in the future. So that's using the word certain always means 100%.
5.
It's believed that the Earth is more than 4 billion years old.
Right, it's believed that the Earth is more than 4 billion years old. Again, the word believed, generally not 100%, but also not too low. So around 40 to 60%.
6. It's probable that global temperatures will continue to rise.
Okay, I'm going to have to rewind that. I didn't quite catch it.
Global temperature. It's probable.
All right, so it's probable that global temperatures will continue to rise. So the word probable is the same as the word likely, okay? So if I say it's likely that global temperatures will continue to rise, it's the same as saying it's probable, coming from the word probably, okay? Likely. So probably means around 40 to 60%.
That global temperatures will continue to rise. 7.
It's possible that scientists can reverse global warming.
Right. It's possible that scientists can reverse global warming. We're saying here that there is a possibility, okay? We're not certain, okay? We're not even sure, but there is a slight possibility. So possibility means around 10 to 20%.
8. It's unlikely that we will solve the problem of aging.
All right, so it's unlikely that we will ever completely solve the problem of aging. Again, the word unlikely that we will ever, that just gives us, that says 10 to 20 or even 5% to 10%, even lower, okay? Because it's really unlikely or very unlikely. Okay, now let's move on. Talking about certainty, right? So we just discussed this, and these are all statements from exercise F, by the way. How do you feel personally, you guys, about each statement in exercise F? Look at the statements below. Introduce each statement to show your view of the certainty. So this will be up to you, and I want you to do this on your own. I'm just going to give you an example, and I'll move on, but I want you to do this on your own. So for example, one, we have oil will run out in about 100 years. So just use your own adjectives, right? Use your own words. So for me personally, I'll say, it's believed that oil will run out in about 100 years. Maybe you're someone that's absolutely certain that that will happen in 100 years. So you could say, it's certain that that oil will run out in about 100 years. Okay, so the difference is in the word itself. Okay, let's take a look at B as well. Nowadays, the Earth. Well, that's a weird one. Nowadays, the Earth goes around the sun. I'm gonna skip this for now. This is interesting. C, the population will reach 9 billion by 250. Okay, instead of we could say, instead of it's known, I could say it's certain that the population will reach 9 billion by 2050, right? I could also say, it's possible, depending on the certainty, right? I could say it's possible that the population will reach 9 or even 10 billion by 2050. Okay, so this is how you do it. Change the word and change the certainty itself. All right, now let's move on. Here we have exercise H, identifying a new skill. Read skills check 3. How does the lecturer feel about each statement in the examples? Okay, let's take a look. Replacement subject it to. Sometimes the phrase with it shows the attitude of the speaker to a factual matter. Okay, so here we talked about the certainty and the opinion of the speaker, but sometimes a phrase with it shows the attitude of the speaker towards the matter and the statement itself. So if a speaker says it's obvious, right, that means it's something that's obvious, something that's known. Everybody or most people know about it, right? If someone says it's important that, and we keep going, then it's probably something serious, right? Something that you have to do or follow. It's fantastic that, it's fantastic here means it's something that's good, right? They're giving us a chance, giving people a chance. It depends on the statement itself. So when I say it's obvious that we all encounter media all the time, that means that it's something that happens all the time. It's obvious. It happens to everybody every single day. It's important that we teach children to recognize the power of media, right? It's very important. We have to do this, right? It's fantastic that Twitter and blogging have given the audience a voice. This is a good idea. It means that the speaker agrees with this statement. Okay? So again, how does the lecturer feel about each statement in the examples? We'll say that 1, well, the speaker feels that it's obvious that we encounter media all the time. 2, we'll say that the lecturer is pretty serious, right? And preaches that we teach children to recognize the power of media. And 3, it's fantastic that basically the speaker is happy and likes the fact that Twitter and blogging have given the audience a voice. Okay, let's take a look at I, understanding a speaker's attitude to a fact. Let's see what we got here. Study each statement, then listen to people reacting to stories in the media. Match the adjective and the statement. Right, so I'm going to play this first. I'm going to let it play once, and then we'll solve this together. Okay, try and solve it before I do, and then check your answers with me. Here we go.
Track 4.6. 1.
That's amazing. It says that lightning travels from the ground to the sky. I didn't know that.
Okay, I'm going to pause it here. It turns out I'm going to have to pause and do it with you guys because we'll get lost if we wait for all of them. Okay, so she says it's amazing that lightning travels from the ground to the sky. She did not know that. So, given what she just said, we'll say that her reaction is the word amazing, right? She's amazed that lightning travels from the ground to the sky. Okay?
2. It's terrible. Malaria kills 1 million people every year.
Okay, so based on what was just said, it's a terrible thing. The speaker thinks that it's really terrible that malaria kills 1 million people every year. So we'll say terrible.
3.
Look at this. Isn't it strange how we accept so many deaths in road accidents every year?
Actually, I'm going to rewind that.
3.
Look at this. Isn't it strange how we accept so many deaths in road accidents every year?
All right. So we accept so many deaths in road accidents every year. I think for this, we'll say it's strange, right? The fact itself, the reader thinks that the fact that we accept so many deaths in road accidents is strange. Okay?
4. I think it's funny that some people believe in ghosts.
All right. So based on what was just said, someone thinks that it's funny that some people believe in ghosts. Okay? Funny.
I don't.
I don't.
5.
£200,000 a week. It's just ridiculous how footballers get so much money.
All right, so someone is basically throwing a tantrum at how much money footballers make. So she thinks that it's ridiculous that they make £200,000 a week or every 2 weeks, if I'm not mistaken. So it's ridiculous that they make so much money.
6. A few lucky people have taken photos of the Earth from the moon. It's incredible.
All right, we'll say that this is incredible, right? The fact that people have taken photos of the Earth from the moon, that's something incredible to the speaker.
7.
This article says that people live longer than 50 years ago. That's wonderful, isn't it?
Well, based on what the speaker just said, she's happy that people now live longer than 50 years ago. She thinks it's wonderful, you guys. Okay?
8. This article gives some really awful facts. It says that many children do not get enough to eat.
Okay, so it looks like this speaker is bummed out because of the awful information that many children do not get enough to eat. Okay, so that was exercise I, and that, my friends, is how you find basically the statement, and that's how you find out what basically the mood of the statement in each case. Okay, so let's move on. What else do we have? Right, so this last one is going to be up to you. Exercise J, giving your own opinion. What is your attitude to each statement in exercise I? Write full sentences with an adjective in each statement. Right, so again, one more time, take a look at each of these statements and write your own attitude. So do you think it's funny that some people believe in ghosts, or do you think it's actually something that happens? Find a different word, okay? Find a different word, okay? It doesn't have to be funny. Find something for words incredible, awful, or you could change them around. Basically, this is you, okay? All you, your attitude. Focus on you only, okay? So that was it for the listening section, you guys, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace out.